Welcome back, dear listeners, to the Friday Flight Podcast, where we rank, recap, and review every horror movie in a given franchise. I'm Jump Scare Jerry and Geraldine, the Friday the Podcast.
And I'm Frankie. I'm the Flight of the Podcast.
Frankie, what are we talking about today?
We're talking about a movie released in 1981, John Carpenter's Halloween 2.
Technically, it's just his story. He didn't direct it.
No, but he still has his name on the title card.
Which is kind of bullshit, if you ask me. But whatever. I mean, also, it's Deborah Hill as well.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course.
Leaving out women. What a great start to a sequel.
It's the 80s. You know, this is how things were in the day, you know?
That's true. Let's kind of hop back into our time machine and go to 1981 for a moment.
Let's do it. Oh my gosh. The gym exercise wear people are wearing. I'm jealous.
God, the crop tops?
Yes, it's
amazing.
Phenomenal.
Ronald Reagan becomes president, 1981.
Yeah.
He was the 40th president of the United States. There was an Iran hostage crisis that ended in 1981. Prince Charles marries Lady Diana Spencer. MTV debuts. Great year.
It's so interesting thinking about like how much MTV has been part of culture, but I feel like it lasted a very specific amount of time. Even when I was a kid, people were saying like, oh, they don't show music videos on MTV anymore.
They still did.
And so if they debuted in like the 80s, I feel like it's like prime time period, or at least how people remember it with nostalgia, was only like 10 years.
Interesting, yeah. Space shuttle, Columbia, launches. That was the first reusable space vehicle, so it launched into space. It's pretty cool. First London Marathon took place. The Yorkshire Ripper arrested, so that's Peter Sutcliffe, also known as the Yorkshire Ripper, was arrested January 2nd, 1981. NutraSweet was approved. The FDA administration approved aspartame is what NutraSweet is. The artificial sweetener marketed as NutraSweet. Moapa Valley flash flood also happened in August of 1981. And there's several movies that were big. The Lost Ark, The Cannonball Run, Superman 2, and Dragon Slayer were all released in 1981. But more importantly, since this is a horror movie podcast, some notable horror films that came out other than Halloween 2. Tagline, more of the night he came home, is An American Werewolf in London, Friday the 13th Part 2, The Evil Dead, so that's the first one. We've already covered that one.
Cool.
The Howling, The Funhouse, The Beyond, Dark Night of the Scarecrow, Dead and Buried, My Bloody Valentine, Possession, Scanners, The Burning, The Final Conflict, The House by the Cemetery, The Monster Club, Burial Ground, Butcher Baker, Nightmare Maker. Believe it or not, that's a title.
That's a tongue twister.
Final Exam, Ghost Story, Happy Birthday to Me, Just Before Dawn, Cannibal Ferox, and Galaxy of Terror. And there's many more, but those are just some more of the, I guess, higher grossing ones or notable
We've covered
ones.
Evil Dead, so if you guys want to listen to our episode on that, we have it earlier on the feed. I also want to point out, did you say American Werewolf?
An American Werewolf in London.
No, I want to talk about it briefly, but I don't know. When I went to go see Texas Chainsaw, it's the 50th anniversary of Texas Chainsaw, so
Happy
they were
anniversary.
showing it, which is another movie we covered, by the way, so you can listen to that too if you want. Anyway, I went to go see it in theaters for its 50th year anniversary, and one of the trailers for the previews during the movie was for a movie called Wolfman. And it's being directed by Lee Winnell.
I told you about that.
Director of Invisible Man.
Yeah.
And notable on the podcast for being involved in the Saw franchise and maybe a future franchise that we'll cover, Insidious. And also potentially The Conjuring. I think he was also involved in some of those as well because James Wan was involved. And I feel like they are a dynamic duo. So I feel like in the future, maybe we do like a little kind of like Monsterverse thing between like Wolfman and Invisible Man. And
that would be a thing. That would be very interesting. But yeah, hopping back into our time machine, here we go. October 30th, 1981, this film was released with a budget of $2.5 million, earning gross worldwide $25 million. Not as successful as Halloween, but it still did pretty okay.
Yeah, it still did pretty good. I mean, the budget is, way bigger, coming from a $300,000 budget on the first one.
Significantly bigger.
Yeah.
This was directed by Rick Rosenthal. This was, I think, his first film, his directorial debut. Of course, it was still written by Deborah Hill and John Carpenter. And then the film was ended by one of the most notable songs ever, Mr. Sandman by the Chordettes. I listen to it all the time. It's on my Halloween playlist. It's a great song, and you should definitely listen to it. So kind of jumping back in, because they kind of just throw you into this. So people who may not have seen this may not know what's going on. But in the first film, we get the events of, Michael Myers comes back to Haddonfield, Illinois to, avenge I mean, he goes back to his old childhood home 15 years later.
To wreak havoc. And then we find out why in this film, which is kind of crazy. Mm-hmm.
So after the events of Halloween night, it's still Halloween, it's just a continuation. Lori gets taken to the hospital. Dr. Loomis is kind of going crazy, barking orders at people, telling them that they need to go on a manhunt for Michael. And Michael escapes unscathed by these 6 bullets. So I will now play one of the most iconic scenes from this film.
I shot him 6 times. What? I shot him 6 times. I shot him in the heart.
Can't have gotten very far. Come on.
I shot him 6 times. Yeah. This guy, this man, he's not human.
Notable, iconic, love it.
I want to take a brief second here to talk about Loomis, just because I keep on telling Bailey throughout the whole movie that like I feel like he's in a completely different movie. And I mentioned this in the last episode, just in the sense of like everybody else is talking like it's 1981, but he keeps on talking like he's in a Shakespearean play. Like his lines are so... It's so funny. I wrote one down when he goes to the Myers house and there's like a bunch of citizens like protesting at the Myers house.
Yeah, they're like not demolishing, but they're like
throwing rocks through the window.
Yeah, they're just definitely like mob mentality.
Well, he is in the police car arriving there and he tells that cop, he says, "The tribe, one of their numbers was butchered. This is the wake." And I'm just like, he's talking in this very like, I don't know. It's very charming to me. I think it's funny to me.
Is it not a reference directly to... No, this happened beforehand, before he was talking about Samhain. So, never mind.
What?
Samhain.
I don't remember hearing that in the movie at all.
As you would say, Samhain.
As they would say, Samhain. That's what they say in the movie.
But it's also pronounced Samhain. Anyway, moving on. It was referenced. So that's in my brain. That's where I was taken back to, because he was talking about all of this and the druids and the rituals and stuff. So me in my brain, I'm like, that's what he's talking about. But maybe not. I don't know.
Well, it's just, I feel like this is how he speaks normally. So in my head, like when he goes to the doctor or when he orders at McDonald's, he's talking in that like way.
How would he order McDonald's? Can you do it for me? Can you give me like an idea of how you you think that he would order McDonald's?
Do you remember when we were
Hi, thank you for calling McDonald's, or thank you. Hi, what can I get you?
Geraldine has never worked in retail, apparently.
No, I have.
She comes from big money, and she cannot relate to the fodder of the poor. Well, if you remember when we watched Dark Shadow, and Barnabas was talking about like the TV, and then there was like a
tiny songstress, reveal yourself.
Yes, yeah. That's how Loomis talks like in this movie.
Yeah, he's a little bit dated, of course. But then again, I really want to hear your McDonald's order. So again, so we're setting the scene. We're at McDonald's. Hi, thank you for choosing McDonald's. What can I get you?
He would say something like, well, if he's in the drive-thru, right? He would pull up to the drive-thru and he would be like, I mustn't delay too much longer. Forthwith, bring me my burger. Something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, actually.
And especially if he's chasing Michael Myers, you know.
I'm like, sir, this is a McDonald's?
I love it. I mean, he brings a lot of charm to me.
I'm not being mean enough. At McDonald's, they're not like, my pleasure, you know. They're not like all friendly.
They're not
like,
Chick-fil-A.
What can I get you? What do you want?
Yeah.
Like, they make me feel like I'm in the wrong for going to McDonald's.
Me and Bailey always struggle a little bit because after we tell them what we want, sometimes they'll be silent. Sometimes when we're lucky, they'll be like, okay, pull to the first or second window. They'll specify, but often they won't. And so we'll go to the first window and nobody will be there.
Yeah. And
this happened to us today because we live very nearby a Burger King.
That's where he would go, Loomis.
We are regulars there. They know us. They know our car. They know our online orders. So I pull up to the window, or I pull up to the speaker, and I'm like, hey, we have an order for Frankie. And they just go, okay, I see it, all right. And I'm like sitting there waiting for them to respond. And then they go, you can pull up. We got your order.
But to which window? Okay. They got 2 windows.
And then I pull up to the first window because, you know, sometimes it really depends on the person that's doing the order, right? Sometimes they want to give you a receipt. Sometimes they want to give you a straw and some ketchup packets. Sometimes they don't give a fuck, right? But normally if they don't care, they're going to tell you like, okay, drive up to the second window. Because they don't want to see your face, right? Yeah. This guy didn't do that.
Yeah, this is my problem with America. We're sending all this money to Ukraine. We're sending all this money to the Middle East. but we can't figure out the fucking drive-thru.
Yeah. So
let's get our priorities straight.
I pull up to the first window, and this guy looks at me, and he must be new there. Or maybe we just caught him during an errant shift, and we've never had him before. I don't know. I've never seen this man in my life. And he looks at me, and he's like, you can pull up to the second window. And I was like, okay. It's like,
in my head, I'd be like, beep, 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 beep. But then what I would actually be like, okay, thanks. Have a great day.
I went okay, and then when I pulled away, I rolled my eyes.
No, that's effing rude is what that is.
It's a teenager who hates his life, so I'm not going to hold it against him.
Okay, that's fair. I would never yell at anybody for that, ever.
Sure.
I've
maybe
never
be
done
more
that.
clear. If you don't want me to pull up, say go to the second window down.
I apologize if people get things wrong, and like I specify what I wanted, and I know that I said accurately what I wanted. And like, I felt so bad at Starbucks one day. They handed me the wrong drink. And I was like, hi, I'm so sorry. I did not order this. And I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. I really didn't. I if I liked it, I would totally take it. But I just don't know if I like it, so I don't want to take it.
What did they react like?
They seemed annoyed, but they made my drink. And I was like, I said I wanted this. I'm so sorry. And they were like, no, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
Took your tip back out of the tip jar.
They probably got even more annoyed with me because I over apologized. They're probably like, shut up.
Yeah, you do that. Just be chill, dude.
Like, people were like, stop apologizing. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, I can't help it. But I am sorry for everything. But anyway, so after the events, we have Dr. Loomis, whatever, he's doing all of that. And simultaneously, he's going on the manhunt, looking around town. They're, finding out, oh my gosh, Michael Myers killed people. He's going to kill again. We got to find this guy. An innocent teen dies, and basically Michael Myers tracks Laurie down at the hospital and is killing the staff while this is all happening. That's crazy.
Right. That kid that dies, by the way?
Ben Tramer.
Ben freaking Tramer from the first movie, when they were talking in the car about like, oh, I think I want to go with Ben Tramer to whatever this like prom thing or whatever is.
I know. I was like, R.I.P. Ben Tramer. I forgot all about that. Too, yeah. And then I watched it and I was like.
Well, what was funny to me is that they asked, like, I think Loomis asked, how old is he? And they said 17. And then Loomis was like, 17? Wearing a mask? Like, judging him for, like, he deserved it. He deserved it because he was still, like, trick-or-treating at 17.
No remorse.
I didn't take it that way, but I felt like he was just, he was so, like, blinded by finding Michael that he was like, Michael's 21. This can't be him. Like, he's 21.
Again, though, zero remorse for killing a child.
Yeah, they didn't care about Ben Tramer at all.
No, he didn't even care about Annie. Like, the Chief Brackett is going on this with him, and he's like putting up with Dr. Loomis being like, we gotta find him. And it's like, sir, you're with a cop who literally is like, please put your gun away. Like, please. Yeah. And he's like, okay, dude, whatever. And then they find out that Annie's one of the kids who died. And then the chief is obviously distraught. He's like, I need to tell my wife before the media announces it. And so then the deputy's like, go do what you need to do. And then freaking Dr. Loomis is like, damn you. The audacity, sir. I'm sorry. His daughter just died?
Yeah.
His only kid?
I was genuinely expecting at the end of this movie, because Loomis was so crazy throughout the entire thing, I was expecting at the end of the movie for them to be like, you're the one that let Michael out. Like, you did it on purpose.
Oh, wow.
I was expecting
that would have been interesting.
Like that.
Because he does get a little blame throughout the whole movie about, like, it's being his fault, some insinuation.
Which it's not. It's not his fault. We know that it was, like, being neglectful at the other place, the Smith Grove
so he
sanitarium.
Says.
Well, from what we see, I mean, we just see a lot of inmates or, of the people who were there, like running around in the first movie, and you're like, what is happening? But we get to see Marion Chambers again, the nurse who was riding with him, and she's like, you have to come back to Smith Grove because the governor has ordered it. And he's like, oh, governor. And she's like, yeah, but no, if you leave these doors, like, there's a marshal, he's gonna
escort you.
Yeah. So it was crazy. But all of that is happening simultaneously. Michael is getting every person in the hospital. And I would not want to work at a hospital at night, let alone Halloween.
No, also this hospital is so empty. Like,
so
there's like
empty.
Like, the only patient in the hospital is Laurie Strode.
Well, not just Laurie, but like the little kid who I don't think it's not like specifically or explicitly stated, but he obviously had candy with razors in it, so that is why his mouth is bleeding.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, always check your candy, the urban legend. Although they did really fearmonger that back in the day.
See, I feel like this movie is kind of a little mean about Halloween and people who participate. In that sense of like, hey, look, if you go trick or treating, you're gonna get a razor, and because they showed that scene and like it had nothing to do with the rest of the movie, and that's why I also interpreted like Loomis saying like 17 with the mask, like, oh, like you're trick or treating at 17.
Didn't take it that way
so there's a few different things about this that I was like is a little teasing people who participate.
I did not take it that way, but that is an interesting perspective. So here we go. I'm just going to jump into something that bugged me the whole movie. So we don't get a lot of screen time with Laurie anyway. Donald Pleasance is really the star of the movie.
Sure.
Dr. Loomis. But even though Jamie Lee Curtis is noted as like the top billing cast, like one of the top billing casts, we don't get a lot of screen time with her. She's in the bed a lot of the time. She doesn't really talk a lot either. Not a lot of speaking parts.
She didn't.
But I mean, she did a notable performance, even though like she didn't speak a lot.
I agree, but I just think in the first movie, she's one of the strongest characters in her personality and her portrayal of like this like teenager, upstanding teenager that you can get behind that does good in school. While in this movie, I feel like Laurie is just the person being chased. Like she has no personality in her character. I feel like this whole entire movie.
I mean, she's also kind of like just trying to heal. She's just like, man, I'm just trying to heal, man. I just went through really traumatic things. I would be a changed woman after that myself. So I get it. I don't know.
Sure. I think, but it's just the writer has that power of like, oh, I'm just going to have her heal the whole movie.
You know what? Blame motherfucking John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, but not really Deborah Hill in like a bad way. Mostly John Carpenter. Because I got beef with him, and we'll talk about it in a minute. What did you think overall of this film, of this sequel being a sequel, with it being a continuation? I don't feel like we get a lot of that a lot of the time.
This is direct continuation. I mean, it picks up right where we left off. I mean, even showing us some scenes from the previous movie, like it's how the film starts off. And I believe this movie is way more complex than the first one. I feel like there's way more stuff going on, and the stuff starts going on a lot earlier. Like I feel like we're in the Michael Myers chase throughout like the whole thing. While in the last one, it's like we didn't really get the chase started until like nighttime befell on Halloween, and then we got one by one all the kids started dying, all the babysitters. But in this one, it like really puts it out there immediately. So I felt like I was a little more entertained as far as like pacing is concerned in this movie.
I agree.
I thought the cinematography was good, but something about it didn't feel as iconic as the first one for me.
I get that. I completely understand that. And to go with you on that journey there, I think that this movie does show a lot more complexity, even in the characters. Like we don't get a lot of time with the other characters, and they die so quick in the first Halloween. We just know notable things like Annie is with, Paul or whatever his name is, and we have Linda and Bob, but we don't really get to know them. We get to know Laurie because she's the focal point, and then we know that she takes care of these kids, and it's like, okay, great, but that's really all that we get to know other than Michael's basic story. And then here we get to see Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis, we get to see Jamie Lee Curtis, but not as much. She's kind of on the back burner. We get to meet this hospital staff that's taking care of her around the clock, and they're very interesting people. All of them are very interesting people.
Yeah, I mean, I do get the sense of like these were people with lives before Michael Myers came to town. Like these people had relationships with each other. Like and we did feel like we were kind of getting a glimpse on their lives. Yeah,
a little bit, I would say. I mean, we get the 2 ambulance driver guys. I'm not really sure exactly what they are. Maybe EMTs. I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know hospital stuff. But it's Jimmy and Bud. Jimmy's a little bit of a creep to me. I don't know what it is.
No,
I agree.
I'm with you. I mean, he comes into Laurie's room.
He barely knows her, and he's just like, hey. Yeah. And I'm like, please stop. But immediately, I thought he was going to try to take advantage of her. That's from my brain.
But I got to tell you, like, I watched some deleted scenes for this movie, and all the people in the comments were talking about, like, all the women especially were talking about how like sweet and handsome Jimmy was, and
he was handsome,
how good of a guy he is. And so like when I was watching the movie, I was kind of questioning to myself, like, is he supposed to be creepy, or is am I supposed to think like, oh, this is a great guy? And I get the sense it's actually the latter. And I think
it's a little bit of both, because like there's parts where I was like, okay, I can see where he would be endearing, and he's supposed to be like the foil to Bud, because Bud's a pig and he's gross, and he's like, I want sex. Ugh. I don't know. Jimmy was just kind of like, hey man, don't talk like that. So, I mean, in some regards, I do see that he's like the direct, like, different character than Bud is. Like, they're opposite. But they, you know, get along decently and they work together because it's kind of what you do with work settings. You don't always get along with people. You kind of have to blend in.
Make it work.
But, I mean, the only thing I don't like is that he's just creeping in there. Like, he's, like, intrigued by Lori anyway. But it's like when she's down and hurt and, like, needing help, that's when he's like, hey, what's up, girl?
Yeah, so to me, it's just creepy.
It is creepy.
But apparently the intent was him to be like a good guy, and that's how people took it back in the day.
I can see where that intent is, and I can see how he would be endearing. I just don't necessarily like it the way that maybe those deleted scenes did more, and they probably should have kept them in.
A little bit. I mean,
change some of the other ones of him just being like, I'll get you a Coke. Like, please stop.
One of the deleted scenes is her actually getting the Coke.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because in the movie she doesn't get it. But
That's
in
true.
the deleted scene, he brings her a Coke.
Very cute. So what do you think overall? I think we kind of talked about this generally of the story itself. Basically, leading into my next question, what do you think of the freaking twist?
The twist, it's kind of meaningless in my opinion.
Really? You didn't...
I just feel like they're like, well, we got to give him a reason to be so interested in Lori. She's his sister. And it's kind of just thrown in there. And I feel like it actually has nothing to do with the story. Like, sure, he killed his other sister. Just saying like Lori is Michael Myers' sister doesn't give me any explanation or motivation behind why Michael Myers wants to kill Laurie Strode.
Probably because he just wants to come back to finish the job. I mean,
finish what job?
Of killing his family. I don't know.
Why does he want to kill his family?
I don't know.
See, that is an explanation. Those are the answers. If I wanted to have an explanation of why Michael Myers is doing this, those are the questions I'd want the answers to.
But it can't just be like, I want to kill my family because I want to kill my family. Like, there has to be like more of a motivation.
It tells me that. But like the movie doesn't tell me that at all.
I'm
the
very
movie,
interested.
in my opinion, is just so vague and it just feels meaningless. Like it has an intention that doesn't qualify in my brain as motivation.
That's very interesting because I think, and this is me saying this now, today, October 3rd. On October 3rd, he asked me what day it was. It's October 3rd. Whatever.
Yep.
You didn't get
Wednesdays we wear pink.
Well, we're different. We're on different sides of the frame because I feel like you're a Mean Girls girl.
I am a Mean Girls girl.
I'm a Full Metal Alchemist guy.
Oh, okay. Got it. I see. Anyway, so on today, October 3rd, 2024, I am predicting right now Frankie's going to enjoy the Rob Zombie version of Halloween. And I'm not going to tell you why, but I think if my prediction is correct, and correct me if I'm wrong in the future Geraldine.
Future Geraldine.
I think that you'll like it. I think that you'll like that better than you'll like this one.
Do they play Dracula during the movie?
No, but that would be legendary. It would.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a little too on the nose though for Rob Zombie, if I'm being honest. But I mean, if you must know, Sherry Moon Zombie, his wife, is in the movie because he puts her in everything. He puts her in everything that he's ever made.
We've heard, like when we were talking about Tim Burton, you brought that up.
Yeah. Which I mean, I think it's cute. It's kind of like Adam Sandler, like just hang with their buddies, and he always puts his wife in his movies too.
Yeah,
I think it's cute.
Great, yeah. Get that paycheck.
Exactly. Hey, so more on the story other than you do not like the twist.
How do you feel about the twist?
I thought it was decent. I mean, it's not like anything to write home about, you know.
Did you see it coming? Were you like
Well, I knew because I've seen
when
this
you
movie.
saw it the first time, do you remember?
No, I just remember them saying that, you know, Lori was his sister, and then I was confused because my dad had these CDs of the movie scores, and I just remember looking at the booklet in the CD, and there was a picture of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode kissing whoever was wearing the mask of Michael Myers, and I was like, if they're brother and sister, why are they kissing?
Well, it shouldn't surprise you too much. I mean, we do live in Tennessee.
About Laurie Strode in general, so at this point in time, Jamie Lee Curtis began to wear her hair much shorter, so she's wearing a wig, and I hate it. That's one thing I could not let go of the entire time of the movie. I was like, it looks so bad.
I'm not a wig watcher, and I know there's a lot of people who are.
I'm not typically like that.
I can never tell.
Watch the Twilight films, and you'll know they're bad.
I doubt I'd be able to tell.
I promise you, when you see it, when somebody tells you they're wearing a wig, you will never be able to unsee it.
That's why I don't want to know. I'd rather not, and then I won't have to think about it, you know?
But, I mean, you're telling me you did not notice at all that she was wearing a wig in this movie?
No, not at all. Did you, Bailey?
Her hair did look a little funny. I didn't think about it that hard, though.
See?
I was
she
like,
didn't
it was
notice.
the 70s.
Yeah.
Fair enough. So to get the role of Michael Myers, we had Dick Warlock, who was our Michael Myers this time.
Oh my gosh, what a name.
Dick
Could
Warlock.
you imagine? Hey, it's Dick Warlock.
That's a dope name.
That's a cool name, yeah.
It is a cool name. And Nick Castle could not reprise his role, unfortunately, because he was beginning his directorial debut and his directorial career. So it's awesome. Good for him. He did, unfortunately, keep the original mask. Oh. So they had to make a different mask, and it was wider than the other one.
Could you tell like the difference in the mask?
When I read it, yeah, I was like, oh, okay. Like I wouldn't have picked up on it. I'm not as into the details like that as other people are. My father is more into that kind of stuff. Okay. Because my dad used to actually make his own Michael Myers mask.
Ooh.
Yeah, very cool. But anyway, Dick Warlock revealed that as he passed by a room, the Michael Myers mask was on a table. He put on the mask and walked into Rick Rosenthal's office, stood there after Rosenthal continuously asked him who he was, and he didn't reply. He took off the mask and asked if he could play Michael Myers. And obviously we get Dick Warlock. He's also our shortest Michael Myers.
That's interesting. I mean, him walking around, I was telling Bailey, like, he's kind of serving right now.
Yeah.
Because the way he kind of moves with like his shoulders a little bit and moves his like leg in front of the other one, so...
Yeah, it was funny. According to Dick Warlock, Deborah Hill was on set throughout the shoot, including his stalking scenes. At one point, he asked her about his slow walk, and she replied, "It's fine, keep doing that." After the release of the film, and in an interview that he walked, she said in an interview that he walked too slow.
I agree.
And didn't resemble Nick Castle's portrayal. I mean, what are you gonna? They're different people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, like I said, I think he was serving. Nick Castle wasn't really serving. He was like a little more stagnant about it.
But I mean, that was more terrifying.
I could see that. But I was complaining throughout, like a little bit throughout the movie. Is like, motherfucker, if you just picked up your pace a little bit, you'd probably be able to catch her.
This angered Warlock immensely, by the way. Ooh, so, as he felt while present during the shoot, she could have voiced her opinion, so he could have altered how he walked rather than finding out later.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong.
They're all kind of like bitchy. I'm not going to lie. Behind the scenes of this one, it felt more bitchy.
I've heard that. I've heard the production of this movie was a little not as family, cozy, friendly as the first one.
Well, no, John Carpenter, I'm sorry. Like, the more that I hear about John Carpenter, as much as of a genius that he is, like, he is a genius, and he has created so many wonderful things, he just seems like an asshole.
Well, yeah, so the best artists are, they say. You know, I'm a big Kanye West fan, and you know how he turned out.
Yeah. But, so I have a video of John Carpenter speaking about the movie. He didn't like it. Like, he was like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to give somebody a new opportunity. I just didn't want to direct. But then he just trashes on the movie, and it's really infuriating because it's like, you okayed this, dude. You were behind it. So to me, it's just like a bitch move. He's like kind of throwing it under the bus.
We'll have a discussion.
Okay.
What about the subsequent Halloween films? Once you had done Halloween, were you at all tempted to say, no more Halloween?
Well, I said that for quite a while. And there are two sides to one when you work in the movie business. One is as an artist, or you think of yourself as a creative person, and the other side is a business person. And I let my producer side come out when they offered me the sequels to Halloween. They offered a nice sum of money, and I also had a lot of hope for giving new directors a chance to make films as I had been given a chance with low-budget films. And the directors who did 2 and 3, Rick Rosenthal and Tommy Wallace, what they were given was a budget, and in some cases a script, and, okay, here are the rules of the game, make your movie. Nobody's going to bother you. It doesn't always work. I thought Halloween 3 was excellent. I really like that film because it's different. It has a real nice feel to it. I think he's a talented director. On the other hand, I think Halloween 2 is an abomination and a horrible movie. I was really disappointed in it. But I don't think the director has gone on and done some other films. I think his career is launched now. But I don't think he had a feel for the material. I think that's the problem. He didn't have a feeling for what was going on.
And that is vital.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, that is a bitch move. You're throwing somebody under the bus. That is just so rude.
Okay, here's what I gotta say about this, because I feel like me and you are actually on the opposite side of the spectrum on John Carpenter's opinion on this.
I don't care. Fuck him.
I think first of all, I don't think we talked about it too much on the last episode on the first Halloween movie, but we talked about how it was a movie done on a $300,000 budget that went on to make $70 million, right? So it was a huge success, but something we didn't mention is that it wasn't a huge success initially. Like it screened in theaters here in the States. It didn't do good. And then when they sent it off to the UK, it was a hit over there. And so after it was a hit over there, we tried again here in the States, and it was a hit over here. And that's how it got to that 70 million. Mm-hmm. So it took a while to find success. And in that time, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill were interested in pursuing other avenues. Mm-hmm. And like you said, John Carpenter, he's back. Carpenter. John Carpenter is kind of like one of those creative a-holes where I feel like he's a one and done kind of guy. He like told his story in Halloween, and now he wants to move on to something else. I remember when we did our season on the Ghostbusters, mm-hmm. we had a bit of a similar tussle with one Bill Murray.
Yeah, and I think I understand wanting to do a one and done, but then don't just say, yeah, I'm going to do it, and then be a dick about it and throw your creatives under the bus. That's a bullshit move.
Yeah, that is kind of BS because you worked on it.
You're a little bitch is what you are. And I know that that's really aggressive, but I don't care. And obviously, he doesn't give a shit. He's a successful man, and his son is also successful. So, I mean, like,
he'll take the criticism for sure.
But no, he won't. He will not. John Carpenter does not do that. He's like, he doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And that's fine.
The criticism, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I like, whatever. That's just my opinion. I just think that that's a little bitch move right mm-hmm. there, because you should stand by it and be proud of it. And I think that even if, like, maybe, I don't know, you just don't do that. That is just so unprofessional.
Sure, but I don't know. I think there's like he said, like, there's a business side to it, there's a creative side to it. And I feel kind of the opposite in that, like, when you work on it, you get to say that it sucked, whether it does or not. So, like, he was a producer on it. He wrote on it. He could have pulled out
at any time.
He could have, but, like, I've worked on a bunch of stuff that I think sucks. You know what I mean? That I get that's something that you get to earn while it being, like, your creation. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then, I mean, I don't know. It just takes, like, he's like, oh, he didn't have a feel for the material, but it's like, I thought he did fine. He did fine. I thought it was a good movie.
I think it goes back to him, like, his whole stance on, well, I don't want to do another one because I feel like it's creatively bankrupt, and having a director that came in, and I feel like to a lot of fans would actually appease to find out that the second movie in this franchise feels a lot like the first one. And yeah. I think John Carpenter didn't want that. I think he wanted, like, he is a person that values like creativity, so I think he would have enjoyed to see the movie not look too much like the first one and have its own vibe and its own style.
But that's not good for storytelling purposes. That's not for continuity.
In your opinion?
No, in general.
Well, sometimes I personally like it when the different movies vary from each other. But if it is a continuation,
you have to have the same feel. Otherwise, that's a completely different film, and that's considered not a continuation of the story. That's just you picking up completely, like, oh, this is October 31st at midnight kind of thing, or like this is November 1st type of thing. Like, that's just a different story in itself. This is literally the same day. You have to have continuity there.
I heard that one of the reasons, because in general, like, we're talking about like our opinions on this film and John Carpenter's view on it. I even heard that, like, getting this movie into production was an issue because he already, like, signed up to work on other movies. And once Yablans, the producer for the first one, saw that the first movie was finally starting to be successful, he immediately wanted to sign John Carpenter on to do a Halloween 2. Mm-hmm. And he did sign the contract, and he didn't want to do it. And so, like, it kind of came to, like, oh, he's doing this because of legal obligations. And not only that, but I heard that the reason that we see Michael Myers burn at the end of this movie was so that John Carpenter could put the character to rest, and that he wouldn't have to worry about there being future installations of his character.
I think that's funny because clearly we have like 13 total films.
Yeah, a bunch of them. There's a lot of them.
So it's like, John Carpenter.
She raised her finger up for her middle finger up for
I
audio
did.
listeners.
I flipped him off.
Yeah.
Willingly, so I would do it to his face. I would never. They say don't meet your heroes, and he's not a hero of mine, but I do like his creative brain. Yeah. I would never, ever, 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 ever want to meet him because I would just say some mean shit to him and be like, "You're a little bitch, dude."
Yeah, I would love to meet Deborah Hill.
I'd love to meet Deborah Hill. I absolutely would, because she doesn't get near enough credit as John Carpenter does,
yeah.
And it's disappointing in general. But Another thing about John Carpenter, he didn't like Rosenthal's version of the film, believing it to be as scary as an episode of Quincy, Maine, and I've never seen that.
Me neither.
The re-edit was done, but Carpenter found it was too tame still, so he took over the editing process, sped up the action, but it's like, dude, if you're gonna do all that, fucking direct. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. It's just annoying.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think some of the deleted scenes, which were, by the way, most of the deleted scenes that I saw were short interactions between the staff with each other. It wasn't really any like of the action stuff. So I wonder if those deleted scenes came from him cutting it, from thinking like, oh, well, this dialogue isn't important.
Isn't it important to want to care about these characters? I don't understand.
I agree. I think a majority of the deleted scenes should have been kept in, because it was just them talking to each other and establishing the characters.
Yeah, it's just frustrating for me as a viewer, because it's like, how are you going to say, yeah, I'm going to let you do this? No, I'm just going to take over. No, I'm just going to do this. Like, that's be a fucking director then.
I'm with you.
That's just annoying, because then you're taking over that person's opportunity, and maybe you squashed it, but no, you probably didn't, because he's actually doing okay.
Well, for example, like Jimmy, right? We talked about how we think he's kind of a creep, but at the time he was like viewed as like this very charming and nice guy of a character.
I can see the duality.
One of the major deleted scenes that people say they remember seeing on like the TV version of the movie is, you know how like at the end of the movie, Lori is in the ambulance, and that's kind of how it ends, about like her looking out the ambulance. That's actually cut down. The scene continues after that, originally shot with Jimmy like sitting up from the back of the ambulance, like he's there with it, because he's also like hurt, you know, obviously he fell down in that one room with all the blood, and he has like a concussion, he's wrapped up in some bandage, and then they kind of hold hands, and she starts saying like, we survived, you know. And this is kind of an example of like a moment of like humanization of character, of like two people coming together. As much as I think he's a creepy guy, you know, that wasn't how it was maybe viewed back in the 80s, and that if maybe that is something that John Carpenter cut because he didn't think it was like, you know, it wasn't important, or maybe there wasn't enough action.
Sometimes they did. I mean, obviously they have like theatrical cuts, unrated versions. They also sometimes just have made for TV versions, because I remember watching things growing up, and I remember specific scenes, and then I'm like, I don't remember that in the movie, because like I would watch it on like VHS or, you know, DVD, and I'm like, that's completely different from what I remember watching on TV. So I mean, there are weird things that they do for that. I don't understand it necessarily, but maybe it's, you know, to entice audiences. I think it's cool. I think it's cool
when there's different versions.
Sometimes it can be a little overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie, because there's a lot of different like versions. It's kind of like when people put out different versions of their music, right? Where they have like, here's the deluxe, here's the ultra deluxe, here's the super duper ultra deluxe, and I'm like, please, what's the difference? Like,
well, you gotta buy them all to find out.
It's frustrating, because I'm not doing that. I'm not. But more on John Carpenter on that. So he also shot a few gory scenes that were added into the film despite Rosenthal's objections. This annoyed Rosenthal because he had wanted the sequel to emulate the way the original avoided explicit violence and gore in favor of well-crafted suspense and terror, which I adore about the original as well. In fact, Carpenter had intended for Halloween 2 to do just that, but the success of the new wave of slasher films in 1979 and 1980 made him afraid that a film which was scary and R-rated but lacked bloodshed and nudity would do poorly at the box office. See, only thinking with his fucking paycheck, leading to the extra graphic material inclusions. He later said that he thought that Rosenthal didn't have a feeling for what was going on with the film. Rosenthal would later go on to direct another Halloween film in the future.
Well, it sounds interesting a little bit too, because, you know, Rosenthal... It feels like, you know, where's the Rosenthal cut? Like, what would this movie look like if Carpenter hadn't interfered and done all these things? You know,
I would for sure watch it.
And also, just like with the original Halloween, it was made to be different. It was made to be like this sophisticated horror movie.
Yeah.
And then to hear you talk about like, oh, John Carpenter was like focused on what audiences would like, or what it's like a 360 on that.
Which is funny, because he's like, I don't want to appeal to my audience and do a continuation. Fuck you. Yes, you do, you little whiny ass little bitch. I'm sorry. It's really aggressive, but I promise you, I mean it. And so we were talking about Jimmy. So Lance Guest, the guy who plays Jimmy, did his own stunt when he slips on the blood and falls on the floor. And this scene was done in a single take.
Well, good for him. I'm glad he didn't have to do it again.
That hurt my head looking at it,
yeah,
honestly.
That looked painful for sure.
It sure did. So Leo Rossi, who played Bud, who was gross.
Just kind of like a Chad.
Yeah, very Chad,
like
very
a
him,
Kyle.
like, oh, come on, just let me just put the tip in type of guy.
Yeah, but you know what happens when you're that guy in one of these horror movies?
You get got.
Yeah, you don't make it to the end of it.
I will say that is my favorite kill scene, is the hot tub.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was my favorite scene in the movie. I think it was very artfully done. It was very pleasant to watch. I agree.
It's just because of the tits, isn't it?
There are tits in that scene, yes. Just a coincidence.
Sure. So Leo Rossi said that the water in the hot tub was freezing cold.
Oh, really?
That's what he said.
Funny.
I would die because it looks so hot, and I'm like, ooh, I bet that's nice and warm and cozy right now because I'm cold. Like I'm always cold, so I'm always like.
Well, have you ever been in a
cozy.
hot tub? I've never been.
I love hot tubs,
What
especially
is it like?
just warm, just like hot
They
water.
feel so great until you get out of them, and then
then you're cold.
awful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it also kind of just
everything-
drains you. It like
everything
depletes you.
aches, and you're tired, and you're fatigued, and you feel a little sickly.
You're supposed
I
to be
just-
hydrated when you're in the hot tub, but
I
people
just-
like to drink alcohol when they're in a hot tub, which is not advised.
It's not?
Not advised, no. 'Cause,
No way.
I mean, if you think about it, it's almost like because they have like jets, so they're typically like massaging
Do you
your back
want to
and
feel the
stuff.
jets?
Yeah, the jets are nice.
So you wanna feel the bubbles?
Benny and the jets, like that.
I'm just a little worried. I feel like I'd be in soup or something. Like I'm part of a stew that a giant is going to eat.
I can just imagine you being like,
You're
just
not
turning
boiling.
around.
You're not boiling alive.
That's
more
what it
like-
looks like.
No,
With
what
the
you're
jets
saying-
and the bubbles from the jets, it
No,
looks
the,
like.
the jets feel like a very faint massage gun.
The
In, like,
best-
the best way.
The best thing about it is if you have a hot tub and it's snowing outside, that is such a beautiful scenery when you are in the hot tub and it's snowing and you're just like, oh,
So you've
I'm
done
warm.
this?
Yeah.
Wow, what kind of extravagant life have you lived?
It's not extravagant, I promise.
When was this?
I mean, some of my family members have a hot tub, but I mean,
That's crazy.
they've had it for years. It's not like it's like a brand new, but it's like, yeah, it's cool. But
Okay.
they don't really get in it unless it's like cold out.
Okay.
And
I want to experience the
And
hot
it's
tub.
nice, especially when it's cold out and you're in the hot tub and you're like, and like the snow is falling on your shoulders.
How would you feel
and you're
about
like,
an indoor hot
"Oh."
tub?
Indoor hot tubs are fine. They're just kind of weird. They get a
Okay.
little muggy.
Yeah, I feel like
Hot
that.
tubs have such a specific smell too.
Yes, they do.
It's like the warm chlorine.
How come
It's
I'm
very
the only one that
nostalgic.
doesn't know about the hot tub?
You just haven't lived.
My grandparents used to have a hot tub. For a
So
while.
everybody share this podcast, and I just want to get the word out so we can eventually afford a hot tub.
Do a podcast in the hot tub.
Oh,
Yeah,
please,
yeah.
please.
Hot tub horror.
Yeah.
That sounds weird. Never mind.
I like it. Hot
no.
tub horror.
No. Do you not hear that?
The
Say it out
horror
loud.
tub.
Hot top horror with Geraldine.
We're not doing that. We're not doing that. Only maybe just you, and then like get you like a blow up
Like
doll,
a
but make
blow
it.
up doll. Yeah. I like it. We'll do it. Subscribe to our Patreon, please.
Oh my god. So Dick Warlock also made sure that everyone was safe when they filmed their death scenes, which I love.
Oh, that's
so for
cool.
example, the guy who played Bud, Leo Rossi's death scene where he was strangled from behind, he told the ladder to arch his back and arms further as he gave 4 tugs, telling him to go limp after the 4th tug, and he would cushion the fall.
Oh.
I'm like, that is so
That's cool.
considerate.
Yeah, very professional.
I wonder who all is like that, because I mean, you want to be safe.
No,
That's
yeah.
definitely so, and especially for that time, I don't feel like they prioritize safety at all. Then.
No, nobody gave a shit about that. There was no like workers' rights or anything. Like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I watched Texas Chainsaw, the original, recently at the theater.
Yeah.
And in that movie, Sally Hardesty kind of gets manhandled a bit, and I'm thinking like how hard are you on the actors, and like, do you try to be like, hey, like there's a way to do this that it won't hurt you. Let's try to figure that out.
I feel like that would be prioritized, but who am I to say?
Yeah, in the 70s, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely not. Oh, yes. So we talked about the little kid and the whole razor blade thing, and you talked about this being like a commentary for that. So apparently this is also supposed to be like the first look of Deborah Hills and John. I know you got me fucking saying John
Carpenter.
John Carpenter, I'll tell you what. John Carpenter's anthology idea for the series after this film, but I don't know that we ever got that, if I'm being honest. I will say that vibe is emulated in the 3rd installment, which is like a film in itself by itself.
Yeah, it's
but
not connected.
It's not connected, so it's not necessarily spoiling anything, but it's really cool.
Yeah.
And
You know what?
encourage you to
You
watch
bring
it.
up Deborah Hill. I know that she was approached to direct the movie. Also, after John Carpenter said no, and she
surprised.
also denied it. And so
Why?
I would have loved to see a Deborah Hill directed Halloween too. I think that would have
Right.
been cool.
I wonder, Deborah Hill, what were you thinking? Let me just get back. Let me get in your brain in 1981 or before then, because technically it would be
Yeah.
before then because
Yeah.
it's released in 1981. What were you thinking? Let me know in the comments. Deborah Hill, if you're listening. Around 11 minutes of the film, the voice of Alice's friend heard over the telephone who was calling about Mr. and Mrs. whatever the fuck their name were. They were like that couple. First of all, I will say this. I love the POV shots. POV shots are so fun. They're
Yeah,
just
they're
really,
cool.
really fun. Because you're like, oh, what's he going to do next? Oh, what's he going to do next? And we get this couple. She's making sandwiches on Halloween. She's like, hey, you want mayonnaise? How about mustard? I just thought it was so
That's
random.
such a good line. I would just start saying that when people ask for food.
It was just funny. I don't know. And then she steps away and she's like, are you sleeping again? And he is asleep. And I don't know if it's because I know John Carpenter is kind of a catty bitch sometimes. But so is Wes Craven. You know, Wes Craven kind of did that by making fun of the fact that people, you know, mix them up all the time. But they were watching Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And that was George A. Romero.
Yeah.
And I was like, interesting. They're coming to get you, Barbara. Very fun. But the neighbor who was like, oh my God, I heard screaming. Maybe they're just beating up on each other. I don't know. Just making it so casual, by the way, that conversation. I was like, what the hell? Like, you're just casually telling. So I thought she was calling the police. No, she was calling her friend Alice or something.
Oh, I thought she was calling the police too. You're right.
yeah,
You're right. She was calling her friend.
You want to know who's on the other line?
Who's the other line?
Nancy Loomis.
Oh, really?
Nancy Loomis, who's playing Annie.
What the heck? That is crazy. Yeah. I mean, seeing that whole scene play out too, like this whole movie, I'm like, nobody in this world in Haddonfield has peripheral vision.
No.
Because I swear, like Michael Myers is always standing like 3 feet to the right of anybody.
Yep.
Never see him.
Never see him.
No.
And nobody, like, I mean, even the girl, right? Okay, this is my biggest gripe about the hot tub scene, which, again, coolest kill in the whole movie. Coolest kill in the entire film. And so Bud goes to change the temperature because she's like, it's actually super hot in here, please. And then she was like, it's gonna get cold in here.
Yeah.
Like, because basically saying, like, I'm gonna like, not do that with
Yeah.
you. And he's like, whatever. And that, of course, that's when he steps up. Piece of shit. Anyway, so he does that, and she kind of like sits outside of it, but she's still in the hot tub, I think. Or maybe not. It didn't seem like she was outside of the hot tub, but
No,
instead
she got up.
She was like sitting on the edge of it.
That's
I
what I
think, 'cause
thought.
Michael
Okay.
was like way taller than her.
And then he comes behind her. First of all, I feel like Bud would be a little bit cold and wet because you're outside of a hot tub, but that's just me. And then also, he would be fully naked. And so Michael Myers touches her here, and then she's like, I'm sorry, I'm saying all these things, and I have to get back to work anyway.
Yeah.
So she thinks that she's given the silent treatment because makes sense, men. And so then she starts kissing and biting and licking on his hand. And I'm like, first of all, do you not look down at this man's hands? They're dirty as shit. She doesn't like bother to look down and be like, who the fuck is touching me?
No.
And then also doesn't even notice that like he's got sleeves.
Yeah,
like
he's
full
wearing a
sleeves.
shirt. Yeah.
And I was like, what is happening? But either way, I digress. It is one of the coolest
Do you
scenes.
think you could tell, like say you couldn't see or anything?
I'm
You
a
could tell like Patrick's hand, but like if it was his hand or like your aunt's hand or anybody else's.
I mean, yeah, I know what Patrick's hands look like too.
Yeah. And what will feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean, like, but also I'm nosy. I'm gonna turn around and look. That's one of the first things I do. I'd be like, who's touching me?
Well, this is the 80s, you know.
I know they have to do that for the movie, but sometimes it's infuriating being on the other end. It's kind of like when you're watching these movies and you're like, don't look in the closet, don't look in the closet. And then they look in the closet and you're like, ah!
This movie has a bit of that, I feel
Yeah.
like, yeah.
It literally does. So many things. But RIP to so many people, man.
You were talking about periphery vision earlier, and I was just thinking that we should make a TikTok where it's like we're doing like POV shots from like Michael's height. But instead of people just walking right by him and not noticing him, it's like every time they walk by, they go like, oh, and they like jump. And they're like, Michael, you have to stop doing that.
Like a sitcom.
Yeah, and they just keep doing it like 5 times in a row.
You just have to get
Every
like
time
the,
they see him, they're like, whoa.
get the eye holes for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this is what Halloween should have been like.
Genuinely. So jumping in to some of the other kills that we got.
Stephanopoulos.
Dr. Mixter, and then we also have the nurse Janet. Both get air bubbles in their brain injected from Michael Myers with it.
Is that what it was? I
Yes, it
wasn't
is.
understanding. I was like, Well, first of all, I didn't watch it. As soon as the needle came out.
Understandable. Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they did too much needle work in this movie. I was
they did do a few needles, yeah.
Because I also not a fan of needles either.
No.
And I don't care what anyone says. Tattoo needles are very different, so shut up. But yeah, so he gets got in the brain, but you don't see that happen. You just find the nurse find him, and she's like, "Oh my god!" And then same thing happens, same fate. He
does that thing again where he like comes out of the shadows.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
Yeah, it's
but
cool.
He's the shape, and he's lurking. Oh, and it was Mrs. Alves. She was like the head of nursing or something. She's some important like title because I mean we get Karen, the one who got killed in the hot tub with her boyfriend Bud, and she was late to work, and this Miss Alves was like, "Hey, you're late again. You're a good nurse, but like chill, and you need to get here on time." And I was like, "Is she talking to me right now?" Because I am triggered.
I do really like that nurse. She seems like very protective, very good at her job.
Like a very good nurse, yeah. I didn't want to see any of them check on those babies, though. And I was like, I'm concerned. What about the baby's vitals? Like,
yeah, they didn't check on anybody in the hospital, really.
Right, not really. Other than Miss Alves always was there when Jimmy was in that room with Lori.
Yeah, that's right.
It was pretty funny.
Good on her.
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't trust his motivation, his motives. I don't know what he's up to. He was very weird. And I was like, meh. But Mrs. Alves, her death was also gross.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see it happen, thank goodness.
I didn't understand, really.
Well, what's funny is I remember seeing her death back in the day, but I could be remembering one of the other films. There's a lot of movies and a lot of deaths, so I remember seeing it back in the day, but I could be wrong. And she basically had her blood drawn out of her all the way. So
I just feel like that is very unlike Michael Myers to do.
I mean,
he's very like stabby stab, and
always.
Bailey pointed at like what's another case where he wasn't like just like Barry like 1-2 murder.
I mean, he's always kind of just been a little bit more creative. It's not yeah. I mean,
I feel like he's never creative at all.
I mean, we've only seen the first film, and that was just
up
that.
to this point, I feel like he hasn't been creative at all.
He does get more creative. I mean, he did that with Bob, and with Linda. I mean, they had like
he does asphyxiation and stabbing.
Yes, strangle makes sense, but with her, it's like, okay, let me find your intravenous vein and let me set up this IV real quick. That doesn't seem like Michael Myers at all.
Yeah,
he's theatrical though.
That one seemed a little like, okay, so you killed her and then you set this up, dog. Like it felt a little saw trap to me. I'm not gonna lie, but like it was cool.
It was neat to look at. I just didn't feel like it was in character.
But to me, knowing the films, he does do this through other films.
But when this movie came out, we didn't have those films. You know what I'm saying? So
right, but
we didn't have that knowledge.
But what I'm also saying is that he was theatrical, even with getting his sister's grave, Judith Myers, and
you're right. You're right about that. That's a good point.
He's very theatrical, very dramatic.
And he came upstairs in that like
and the ghost, the sheet. So
the sheets.
He be doing things. He's a little extra.
You're right.
He's a little extra. He just has more tools here. Mm-hmm. So he's like, what can I use at my disposal? That's what I'm thinking. But then again, I'm also giving an entity a lot of credit here. I don't know.
Well, that does make me wonder. I do, because when we were talking about the scene where like she was like biting his finger a little bit, I was wondering, what is Michael thinking during this?
It's probably not anything like Texas Chainsaw.
Is he enjoying this a little? Oh my god, Texas Chainsaw 2?
Yes,
that was so weird. When she was like touching his chainsaw, and he was like, oh, he was kind of into it.
Yeah, I was like, what am I watching right now?
No, it's weird. Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, what's going on in his head right now? He's probably like, this dumb bitch thinking I'm gonna I don't know.
I'm wondering like what's going on in Michael's brain is what I'm wondering, Or
maybe it's like those other things like, have you ever wondered what's going on inside someone's brain? Like the inside out like sound. Mm-hmm. But instead of the that, I don't know, he's just, I don't know. Just
I do wonder.
Red or something. I wonder.
Turns out is I just wanna be part of your symphony. The whole time.
Hey, he's dramatic, and I get it. I will say one thing that I feel like was a throwaway scene was the dream sequence that we get when Laurie's in the hospital bed, and she vaguely remembers her mom saying, "I am not your mother," and then we see her meeting Michael in the asylum. I was like, why was this needed?
See, that's how I feel about the whole twist in general. Like, I think I would have that scene. Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it was kind of like just randomly there. In general, that's how I feel about the twist. The twist is just randomly there. I feel like if we delved into it a lot more deeply, I feel like there's something interesting there.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's not the movie we're in. You know, we're in like this hospital thing.
I'm very curious to know what you're going to think about other timelines as well. But I'm excited. I'm not going to like say anything because not every timeline is the same thing. So
I'm excited to see what's to come.
Me too, because I think that it'll be very interesting. I think there's a total of 10 deaths in this movie. We have the doctor, the head of nursing, Karen and Bud. Jimmy it's not confirmed that he died, but he did have a concussion that was pretty gnarly. We had the other nurse. We had the security. No, did I say the security guard?
I don't know. Start over.
Okay. Security guard and Janet, because they went to go check on the phones. Mrs. Alves, which is the head of nursing, and we had the doctor, the actual doctor. So that's 4. Then we had Karen and Bud, and we had the other blonde nurse that I don't remember her name. And then we also had the marshal at the end. And I think that... Oh, wait, and the girl, the Alice girl, whatever the fuck her name was. Well, I only counted... No, wait, and the 17-year-old boy, but that wasn't at Michael's hands. That was because Dr. Loomis was like, it's him!
And Michael and Loomis.
I'm not saying anything.
Well, obviously there's more Halloween movies, but in the premise of this film, I feel like Loomis and Michael die. Like, that's the intent here. That's what we're being shown. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
She pleads the 5th.
Or do they? Dun, dun, dun. That's perfect. Great. Wonderful. Love that for me. Couldn't have done that better myself. And I think that kind of covers basically the whole plot of it. I'm kind of curious. Generally, what did you like? What did you not like? You know?
What did I like? I like the more complexity of the story. Man, guys hate me for saying this, but I do feel like parts of the first movie is kind of boring. Like, it's just
wow.
We're just waiting. The shots last a little too long. You heard me complain in the first episode of this season. And I just think that's of the time. I've heard that, like, this movie has been hugely influential on slashers in the future, like in the next decade or so, within, like, Friday the 13th and within Nightmare on Elm Street. This movie serves as an inspiration to a lot of that kind of stuff and just modern slasher movies in general. But as somebody who has, you know, through my 2024 lens, who have seen horror movies of the modern age, the original Halloween doesn't really stand out as like an exemplary. This is how change like this is how monumental this movie is. So in that sense, I feel like Halloween 2 is doing way more. Like, I'm following different characters. I get to see Michael's POV for a lot longer. Then I get to cut to Laurie. Then I get to cut to the hospital staff. Then I get to cut to Loomis. You know, it's like several things are going on at the same time, and I really enjoy that. So as far as like differences, something I enjoyed about this movie is that. Something I didn't enjoy about the movie is mostly the Laurie stuff. I feel like Laurie was already kind of like an untapped potential in the first movie. Like, I think she did great, and I love her performance in that movie, and I felt like I would have loved to see more of her character in this one and let it shine a little more, especially if they give that twist of like, oh, she's his sister, you know? Where it's the relationship between them, not just like familially, but like what emotions does Laurie feel about it? What emotions does Michael feel about it? There's a lot of unexplored things about that.
She didn't figure out that he was her brother, but I think that
she had that memory.
But I mean, clearly that's not correct timeline wise.
You don't think so? I mean, they said that she was born 2 years before he was admitted.
Yeah. I don't think that timeline works out. So
you think this is just like a coincidental, like, future dream or something that she had?
I think it potentially works out. I mean, I haven't seen the other movies, so maybe there's some retcons or maybe there's just context that I don't know yet. But they said that she was born 2 years before he was committed, and then her parents died 2 years after he was committed. So that means that she was at least 4 years old before she was adopted.
Yeah.
Right? So theoretically, I think that memory, because it kind of looked like she was in like a hospital or mental hospital.
Yeah, maybe she was visiting Michael or
so
something.
I think maybe she was taken to visit Michael potentially, or it could just be like a fever dream of her like thinking of visiting Michael when he was a child. I don't know. But clearly she had a vision of Michael as a child, and it could be metaphysical, but in my headcanon thus far, she visited Michael with her parents after he was committed.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think that her adoptive family would have done that. And I mean, of course, was us finding out that they would have, the original biological ones passed away after the fact. To me, I just don't see them bringing Lori to meet, to say, hey, let's go say hi to your killer brother. Why would you say that
if you don't really know them at all?
I mean, because it's never expounded on.
Exactly. So I feel like anything is possible.
But I think it's like a throwaway scene. I don't think it means much.
I agree.
So I don't think that I don't think they're putting that thought into that. You know what I mean?
So what did you think it meant?
I mean, obviously, I knew what the twist is going to be because I've seen it several times. But to me, it was just setting that up.
So do you think it? So like
there's some connection.
So you think she just had like this vision basically or something?
I mean, yeah. Sometimes I have dreams about celebrities I've never met. I mean, I don't think it's impossible.
I just feel like it's so coincidental, you know.
I mean, I've had dreams about people that I have seen in passing before that I'm like, oh, what?
But have you had a dream about like an event that happens like the next day with somebody or something?
Like premonition wise? Yeah. I've had very small things like that happen. There are some people who have like strong, premonition type of dreams and stuff. Do I believe in that all the time? It depends. Circumstantial. It really just also people look for those signs too. So I think that we're making a mountain out of a molehill is what I'm saying. I don't think it's as important as they make it. They set it up to be. I feel like
they make it so important. I don't know if this is a relationship that continues on in the future installments of the film, that Lori continues to be like his sister or whatever. But in this movie, it feels like this is like the big twist that's supposed to it is supposed to be important or something.
Well, I can't speak to that because there's a lot of different stories.
We'll find out.
There's a lot of different stories. So I can't exactly speak to that. But what I can say is that to me, they spent it was just, and then they barely introduced that this is coincidentally you were his psychologist or doctor, psychiatrist for 15 years, and we just found a file that was sealed.
Yeah.
What are the chances? They would have given that to him. That's stupid.
Yeah, silly goofy.
Very silly goofy. It's just silly. Now, I mean, I'm not like a hater of that whole storyline. I just think that it was just slapped together.
I agree. I just feel like it's not really a part of that's not what this movie's about.
No, I mean, obviously it's about revenge. That's what the bottom line is he's just a killer, man. He's just fucking evil. He's just killing people, and I think that that's fine. But I don't know. I don't necessarily have a strong love-hate relationship with any of the themes of it, though. It's just kind of like, whatever. I just think that that's kind of sometimes how the 80s were.
I agree. Yeah,
it was very patchwork.
I mean, even the first one, I mentioned that a lot of the kills were thought of before it was written in what was going to happen. It was like, what are cool ways for people to die?
Well, yeah,
and so they thought of that before they thought about how it was going to be patched together.
I think that's sometimes a great way to work. I mean, it's kind of like how you write an actual paper. A lot of people start everywhere but the intro because it's hard to introduce what your paper's about if you don't know what it's going to be about.
Yeah, that's true.
So a lot of the time it's like, well, I mean, like you said, sometimes for the Saw movies, they would build the Saw traps first and then build the plot within it.
Yeah, it's kind of separate. Like there's a team working on the traps, team working on the story, then they merge it together.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be seamless, but especially then in the 80s, that's just kind of where we were at the time. But I'm sure they were writing this prior to 1981. It just got released then. But I don't know. I think it's still near and dear, though, to my heart. And I definitely I didn't remember liking it as much back in the day as I do now. Like, watching it again with my 2024 lens, I was like, this is way better than I remembered growing up. Like, I remember being like, oh, I just didn't like it as much. But as an adult, I'm like, this is fine. This is a really good movie. I would watch it back to back because it's a really good, double feature.
Okay. Yeah, I think a lot of people watch it that way. I think a lot of people correlate the two together often. Watch it as a back-to-back flick, double feature.
Yeah, I think that it's a good time. Bailey, what did you think overall?
I liked it more than the original one.
That's blasphemy, man.
Huh?
That's blasphemy, man. Blasphemy.
Well, I just mean, like, I think that the story was a lot more complex, but it wasn't overly complex. It was easier to follow. I liked a lot of the cinematography, and I thought there was some really interesting things that were introduced. But I also have some criticisms for it. Like what Frankie was saying, I really criticized the way that Laurie was handled in this movie because I like Laurie a lot. And she had like 3 speaking lines, and the rest of the movie she was just going like whimpering in a corner in the hospital for various reasons.
Or just when she was on the ground outside of the hospital where Loomis finally showed up and she was trying to say help me, but she couldn't say it.
Yeah,
and then
but
as
then
soon as
she screamed. Yeah.
As soon as they walk in and close the door, she was able to scream.
Yeah.
Scream Queen, we love it.
Just a whole thing. And also if she would have just kept I know the excuse for this is like, oh, she was injured. But if she would have just kept running out from the hospital, it took Michael so freaking long to get outside. It had to have been like 45 minutes.
Yeah, Deborah Hill's right. He's walking too slow.
Yeah. So, like, she could have easily been across town. I know this isn't that big of a town, right? Or she could have been in the middle of a cornfield or something.
Well, yeah, no, because when Michael finds out that she's in the hospital, this guy's got a boombox, and he's like, oh, yeah, Laurie Strode was taken to the hospital. And he's like, oh, shit. And he's like 5 paces away from the hospital.
Yeah, speaking of, if he walked so slow, how did he get to the hospital in the same night, right?
Well, like
It would
Geraldine
easily
said,
take 3 to 5 business
when he
days.
turns that corner after he talks to the guy with the boombox, it's like 5 steps away, apparently.
True. It was like, oh, suddenly, like, you're in town, and it's like a town, kind of like downtown Clarksville or something, and then he's like, oh, make a little left, and here we go, we're at the hospital.
Where 3 people are admitted.
But, yeah. I enjoyed this horror movie. I had the very classic horror experience where I was yelling at everybody, like, why are you doing this? Like, why are you getting in the car? Why don't you scream, Laurie? Jesus Christ, you know. But, I mean, that's enjoyable, you know, picking on the
it's fun.
Bit. But at the same time, I have some serious criticisms for the writing and how, like, things were just not done very well sometimes, and Laurie's character especially, and some of the male characters. It's just like, okay, why do I care, honestly?
Yeah.
But I did enjoy it.
It's definitely not it's not my favorite Halloween film at all.
All right, so are we ready to rank and rate? All right, can I go first?
Sure, you typically go first. That is the order.
I like to I'm a polite
you say
gentleman.
that every time. Can I go first?
I'm a gentleman. I like to ask for permission.
I'll go first.
I'll go first. And I feel like I've said my piece with this movie, and I have a lot of feelings about it. And while I kind of agree with Bailey in that I think this is a more entertaining movie. Yeah. Just because of its complexity. Like, I thought the first one was boring at times. This one, it kind of kept my attention like the whole movie. And because of that, I feel like I was more tuned into every scene of the movie. I thought it was more creative. The budget, you could tell, was obviously bigger, especially for like that explosion scene at the end. Yeah. Oh my gosh, like that was amazing. But the first movie is just way more iconic. The second Halloween movie feels like a slasher flick. Mm-hmm. While the first one is like a slasher legend. You know what I mean? It's like the origins of something different, something new, something that would go on to have a legacy. Mm-hmm. While this sequel feels like a sequel. Yeah, feel like, you know, it starts off where the last movie left off. Yeah, you know,
quite literally.
And so because of that, it doesn't have the same feeling of like this is special, like this is different, and I give it a 7.
For this one, I enjoyed it a lot. It was very good pacing, but it's just not the first one to me. I love Halloween 1978. It's just perfect, even though there's no blood, even though it may not be as fast. But I don't necessarily go into that with that. There's also the nostalgia that I am attaching to it, so I know that it holds a lot more weight for that for me. But then again, I mean, Michael Myers himself was scarier in the first one. He had this, you know, just almost just stiff walk, and I was like, oh my gosh, like how is he still catching up to them? He wasn't as, I mean, yeah, he was dramatic. He was still dramatic in this one, but I don't know. It was just, there was a different vibe to it than this one. And not that I'm saying Rick Rosenthal did a bad job versus John Carpenter, but I just think I enjoyed the introduction to the story a lot more. And I think that it shows more of the Halloween spirit that I love, where it's like the costumes and, you know, the carving pumpkins and jack-o'-lanterns and stuff like that. And to me, it's just Halloween night. It feels like Halloween, and it to me embodies everything what I think of. Like, oh my gosh, that feeling with the windows rolled down, the cold chill in the air.
It's a neighborhood. It's babysitters. You know,
which is what they were gonna call it, babysitter murders back in the day. But to me, it's just not as enjoyable as the first one, but it's still it's a lot better than I remembered. So to me, I would give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay. That's fair enough. That'll make it our second place. Halloween, followed by Halloween 2. Bailey, what do you rate the movie?
So if you remember, I gave the first Halloween a 5. So Geraldine has me in like her death note. Like
No.
I'm about to be.
It's not for
there.
it is not for everybody. I
I'm
promise.
gonna give Halloween 2 a 6.
Okay, so we're moving up in the world.
I think they made significant improvements when it came to the overall like plot structure, writing, complexity, and just interest. I really like the whole hospital thing. I think that's fun, and it's a different change of scenery. But like I said, I have some criticisms. I really think that they kind of stepped back in some ways, or just didn't improve where I would have liked them to improve, like with their female character writing. But yeah, I thought it was all right. I think there's a lot of room for improvement, though. So I'm expecting bigger and better things from the series.
I'm excited to see where you land in the later ones, because Precursor, 4 and 5 are some of my favorites.
What?
They're very fun.
Ooh, I'm
I
excited.
think 4 is probably like one of my absolute favorites.
I'm excited. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited because we're skipping 3.
4 is the one that we're covering next.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's the next one in this timeline.
Yeah. Sorry, Season of the Witch. We'll cover you in a Dead End special in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, it's still, we'll have to cover it before we get to another timeline. That's all I'll say, just so you can appreciate.
Okay.
But there's no correlation in storyline or plot or anything. So yeah, we're skipping ahead and we're doing 4, 5, and then we'll finish out the season with 6. And it'll be exciting.
I'm excited.
I'm excited to go along this journey.
Yeah, I hope you guys join us.
Just recently, we were in a video with one of our friends, Rick's Horror. If you guys wanted to check it out, we talk about some of the lore and fun things, haunting things about Tennessee, where we're from.
Yeah, that wasn't originally the topic of discussion we planned on having, but that's what we talked about. So please go check it out. It was a lot of fun in general. Rick's Horror. Wow, what a show. Like, I promise you've never seen anything like it. So if you haven't checked it out, go check it out.
He's very fun, and it was a really fun episode. Lots of cool tidbits that I don't know where they dredged out of. They just came out of us, and I was like, whoa, I guess this is where we're going. So,
it was a lot of fun, honestly, and I hope we get to do more collaborations with other people. That's Rick's Horror.
Rick's Horror, and we'll tag him and everything. And this was our first collaboration, hopefully of many. So stay tuned for more. And then, follow us on social media, FrightFlyPod. Email us, frightflypod@gmail.com.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Fright or Flight, a Live Oaks Village production. This episode was hosted by Geraldine Johnson and Saul Alberto Arzmendi Ochoa. Produced by me, Bailey B. Edited by Geraldine Johnson and music composition by Saul Alberto Arzmendi Ochoa.